Feras, welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Adam, it's been a while. I'm really excited to be on this podcast. Looking forward for this conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. And, I like to mention to the audience a little bit about how we know each other. And you and I have known each other, maybe 8 to 10 years now, going back all the way to the days when I joined the Google Analytics Premium team at Google. And you were leading up one of the premier partners that we worked with to help our clients be successful with the product. And so you and I got to know each other a little bit and had the opportunity to work together on multiple clients and just kind of kept in touch here and there throughout the years. And it's been exciting to see the success that you've had with your previous business, Enor, and just kind of how you're giving back these days. So excited to dive into all of that with you today.
No, these were exciting times. We appreciated all the help and support that Googlers like yourself were providing. And I think I always tell entrepreneurs there's business and there's the people side of it and having these relationships and be nice, work hard, connect with people. Those last, sometimes last a lifetime. So yeah, appreciate that we can getting back again and talking about what we've learned along the way.
Yeah, those were fun times. I always look back on that period of time at Google as kind of like the best time because the team that we were on, the Google Analytics Premium team, was a startup within Google. And we had just amazing people, many of which are really good friends of mine, including my former boss, Paul. It was just kind of an exponential time for me. And I think the relationship piece is so important because I knew you and I knew that when I reached out to you with something I needed for a client, you would respond to me right away, even though you were the CEO of the company. And that confidence that I had in you and just knowing that you would take good care of my clients and I could count on you guys to do a good job was not something I felt for all of the other competitors that you had. Yeah, I think that goes a long way. And the way that, you and I have kept in touch here and there over the years, it's just so important. We'll talk a lot about business today, but I think that the people aspect and the relationships that you make are really the foundation for all the success.
100%. And when I speak with a lot of the entrepreneurs or people who want to start a business and they're not sure how to market, how to sell, where to start, I always say most of us underutilize our network, be it our family members, our friends, our ex-colleagues, our gym buddies, whatever it is, our friends at a nonprofit that we spend time at. You don't have to go far. Just keep in touch with people. And if you've been behind on this, it's a habit, just like any other habit. It's a muscle that you have to build and staying in touch with people, help people out. I think reciprocity is a thing. So your network for the starting entrepreneurs, your network is a gold mine in so many different ways in providing advice, support, potentially connections, referrals. Maybe they buy from you, but your network is I think it's a gold mine that most of us underutilize.
Yeah, that's really great. It's a really great point. And I'd love to dive into that when we get into the kind of advice around how people can go about starting a business later on. I think that has been huge for me as I'm in this process of starting my business after leaving Google. And so let's dive into that in a little bit. But before we get to that, Feras, I'd love to have you share a little bit about who you are, your journey, and what you're up to these days.
Yeah, sure. So I started my career actually technical in engineering. I was an electrical engineer, worked for Home Shopping Network, building their first high-tech cutting edge, press one for this, press two for that, right? That was cutting edge 20 years ago. Just the whole technical piece did not work out really well for me. I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. I was about to get laid off actually and said, you know what, I got to do something I enjoy. I mustered all the courage I had and walked into the CEO's office and said, hey, Russ, can you help me find something else at work that I can, something more like people oriented, not maybe very, very technical. And at that time, I wasn't sure if I was going to be fired or because we just had a layoff and I barely missed that layoff. And in my mind, and I had a young family at the time, I was really, scared, I guess. I just had to do something different. And he was very supportive. And he said, well, we're looking for an account manager, someone who would require some travel. Are you okay with that? I said, yes. And he took a bet on me and I started to work really hard at the time. And I really enjoyed that piece of it, meeting with people, managing accounts, understanding the business side of things. And that hard work and that pivot led to many promotions, many opportunities, including moving to the Silicon Valley and getting into the whole startup scene. So that, that courage at times, if something's not working out for you in your career or in your company, I think you have to learn skills. You have to capitalize on the skills that you have. And sometimes might look very scary, get a look it in the eye and take that step, and opportunities will open up.
Very cool. I didn't realize that you had worked at HSN. That's
Oh
funny. I
yeah.
also worked with HSN while at Google.
Oh, I did not
And
know that.
yeah, I know it's funny because I always thought it was kind of crazy that people bought things off the TV. But I mean, before the internet, that's was how things were happening. And I remember visiting them in Florida and going and like seeing the facility where they
Yeah.
do it. And it's pretty awesome. The data that like the way that they understand the customers
Yep.
and how like they were telling me like the speaking of relationships, like the people watching feel a relationship with the
Yep.
hosts.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
they might show the same product. Some people won't buy the product from one host, but will buy the product from the other host. And they like know how many, I mean, I'm telling you this, you already know this. I found it so interesting that they know how many people should be calling in to
Yep.
signify if people are liking the product or not. And they will cut the product short and people are like speaking in real time into the
Yep.
people's ears. Just a fascinating business. So that's pretty funny. So tell me a little bit about, okay, so you had some success there. You moved into Silicon Valley. Tell me a little bit about kind of how you took the leap to go out on your own.
So joined a startup here, an infrastructure startup here in the early 2000s. We raised $96 million. This is after the bubble burst. So people believed in what we were doing. We were ahead of, I guess, of the market, not a whole lot of sales, not a whole lot of revenue. And then the company ended up folding. And before the company folded, actually, I was laid off. So I did dodge the first layoff in my career. But at that time, and I was a VP. I remember the CEO walking into my office and said, "Hey, Feras, we have a layoff in the next couple of days," which I expected that to happen. What I didn't expect is that I was going to be part of it. And he said, "Hey, Feras, you'll be impacted." And we're hearing a lot of layoffs these days, tech and outside of tech. It's really hard when you hear it. It hit me at so many different levels. You feel stomach dropping, the floor is shaking under your feet. You question your self-worth. Every time I tell the story, I stop myself because I'm about to get emotional. But it's hard. I was a VP. Like, why me? I mean, there's the financial part. Oh my God, I have a family. What am I going to tell my wife, my kids, my in-laws, my friends? But it is what it is. After a couple of days, maybe a week of mourning and going through that process, which is important, you have to really look forward. You can't let this hold you back. It's hard. It doesn't, some of us might take longer to recover. I know people who haven't really recovered. It's hard. But luckily, and maybe with some of the things I do, and on this at the spiritual level, and the support of my amazing wife at the time, who said, "You know what, we'll figure it out." Couldn't get a job, couldn't get an interview. Actually, I worked really hard to get an interview, but it was a dry market. So 6 or 7 weeks after that layoff, I ran into a friend of mine who said, "I'm starting a business, and Feras, do you want to join?" And a couple of weeks after that, we said, "Let's do it." So we put our resources together and decided to launch a new business. That is in 2003, and it was selling websites, web design services to small businesses. So I went from selling this infrastructure, not selling. I didn't have a sales background. I was doing more management, professional services. But we went from pitching and being there with the C-level at Comcast and AT&T to selling websites to the small diner around the corner. So that was a big shift across so many different levels. But that's how I got into entrepreneurship. So I always joke and I say I was forced into entrepreneurship. I always wanted to have my own business. Life is good when you're a VP. So, you don't have that pressure to do something on your own. But the layoff definitely forced me into this. And, we ended up doing a bunch of other things after that. But that's how I got into entrepreneurship.
Very interesting. And yeah, it's a lot of layoffs are happening right now. So I guess if you were to give advice to somebody who has just been laid off, what would you say to that person?
Like I said, it's hard at the personal level. Financially, also, it could be hard depending on where you are in your life, in your journey, and the severance and all that. I think layoffs happen for two main reasons. Sometimes companies shut down entire divisions. Sometimes companies that, this whole product is no more, right? And you could be a top performer in that vertical or in that product unit, and you're impacted. And at times, companies, and this is harsh to say, and I don't mean it in any bad way, but sometimes companies lay off the bottom 5%, 10%, 20%. So I think it's important for the person impacted to do an honest and objective assessment of what led to that. Not again, it's hard. It's a sort of balance. If you dwell on it too much, you get stuck. Not good for the mind, not good for you to get back on your feet and find something else. But if you're not doing well, if your last 2, 3 reviews, you're not exceeding expectations or meeting expectations, maybe there's something there to learn from, so that you avoid this scenario in the future. So I think I always say, like, look at the last performance review, whatever feedback, if you had a good manager, if you had someone who was really honest with you and give you good feedback, look at that. You know what? I got to improve in these 3 areas. That's it. Don't dwell on the layoff, and don't question your self-worth or what happened at the company or why did they do it. It just, you won't get anywhere. So assess if there's something to learn from that in terms of improving your skills, your attitude, your perspective on things. I think that's really important. And from there, you have options. If you have a solid severance, like, this is the most opportune time, the best time to start a business. If you've been thinking of starting a business and you've been busy, or now you're covered in terms of severance, you have time. When you're laid off, the one thing you have is you have a lot of time. So, and even if you're still not sure about pursuing your own business or maybe going back to be employed, I tell people, like, spend the first 4 hours of the day looking for a job, and then the next 6 hours talking to people that you want to maybe sell to, looking at competitors. Or if you're gung-ho and you're ready to start your business, then spend those 10, 12 hours a day starting that business. So you have an advantage if you've been laid off, you have time, and assuming you have some savings or you have a good severance, maybe even 2, 3 months of severance. I think that's good, where you can maybe cut your expenses and extend that runway to maybe 4 to 5 months. And if you work really hard, I think, especially in services and consulting, you don't need a whole lot of capital to get something going. But it does require a lot of time and effort, and obviously, learning what to do. Learn from that experience, and then it's a really great time. It's an opportune time to start a business.
Yeah. So Feras, sounds like you got things going with this website design business. It kind of evolved from there. Tell me a little bit about how your entrepreneurial career went and kind of how that transitioned into what you're up to these days.
Yeah, sure. So we started that business in 2003. I had zero experience in sales, especially to small business owners. But we hit the pavement. We tried everything. We learned. We took courses, my business partner and I. And it was really hard for the first 18 to 24 months. It was really, really hard. We were barely making it. But then we figured it out. Our first sale was $1,400, a 4-page website that took us 3 months to build. And then, the next project was a $2,000 project for my dentist. And then we started to sell to bigger companies. And then over time, we added different services. We have a website now. You have to drive traffic to the website. So adding more services, becoming better at these services. We started to hire people. And then we really, I think the major pivot in that, at least for that business, we started to focus on analytics when Google Analytics was becoming a thing, and then became a certified partner with Google. That just took us from working with small and mid-sized businesses to now working with the Fortune 1000, eventually with the Fortune 500, later with Fortune 50. So we're actually not only a Google partner, but we did a lot of work for Google. We did a lot of work for Salesforce. We were the #1 Google Analytics provider to the US government. We had, I think, 20 government clients, the IRS, SS, Social Security Administration, the State Department, and others. We went from very, very humble beginnings to 6 figures to 7 figures later. In 2014, 2015, we were into 8 figures. So from very humble beginnings to growing this amazing consulting company. And then we built a couple companies overseas as well. That's a different journey there. But we decided to sell the business and we were acquired by Dentsu in 2019. And that was obviously something that was very rewarding, not just on the financial side of things, but also to build something and like your son graduating in a way. And then, yeah, so I stayed with Dentsu for a couple of years, then took a couple of years off to do some pro bono work for nonprofits, something I wanted to do for a long time. And now I'm focused. My mission is to help entrepreneurs avoid the mistakes that I made and help these entrepreneurs grow and scale their businesses to 6, 7, 8 figures with my startup with Feras spelled Feras. On YouTube, we have a channel also on our website. So that's where I'm at today.
Very cool. Yeah, it was, as I said at the beginning, like very cool to watch the success that you had, right? I knew what it was like working with your team on the clients, but also just to watch how it continued to grow and then how you were ultimately acquired and, just how that whole journey went. And it's cool to see that, you use that time to, work on pro bono work with nonprofits. That sounds like something that you had always envisioned yourself wanting to do. Tell me a little bit about how that panned out for you.
So actually, my wife and I got the nonprofit bug or whatever it is early on in our lives. So I started to do blood donations from an early time. So I'm a lifelong blood donor. I think I'm on my 112th unit now. We also supported local nonprofits. I serve on the board of the Red Cross. So I've always service and helping others has been something really important for me and for my wife. When we didn't have a whole lot of money, we put time, whether it's at the local nonprofit or maybe tutoring or Big Brother type thing, or like a youth camp, volunteering, bunch of causes. And later, when we were doing well financially as a business, we made a commitment, my co-founder and I, at Enor, to take 2% of our total revenue and donate that. And 2% of 6 figures is one thing, then 7 figures, and we really continued that commitment even when we were at 8 figures. And we asked our team members tell me the nonprofit that you want to donate to, and we'll donate on your behalf. Not just matching. Said you don't have to donate; we'll donate on your behalf. Just pick the nonprofit. So that was really important to me throughout, sort of personal life, my business life, is to always be of service, of help to others. At times, you're very busy. When we were selling the business, I had zero time to do anything but focusing on the business. So obviously, at times you don't have maybe the means, but you can either put time or put effort, or at least think positively about others who are suffering, or you can where you can help. But I think a lot of us get busy with, or we get busy with life and leisure activities, and we can have one less hobby or spend a couple of less hours on TV a week or a month and help others. And I think it's very rewarding, not to the recipient, but also to us, like internally, like when you're doing something for others, it just feels great. It's not just, life is not just about me and about me making another buck, or me going on another vacation. I know I love making a lot of money. I'm a capitalist at heart, don't get me wrong, but I think it's really important to be there, for others. I think it was Ralph Waldo Emerson who said, life is not just about being happy, about happiness, but it's about being compassionate, being of service to others. I mean, that's the true essence of life. And that's something that's been really important in my life.
Very cool. And when you were in this phase of kind of post sale, post staying for a couple of years, and you were in this kind of giving back pro bono, like what kind of things were you doing? Were you helping them with the stuff that made you successful? Was it more like, what did that look like?
I advise people to give back from what you have. If it's financial, that's one thing. But also, if you're good in management, maybe you can find a nonprofit that needs some business planning. Or if you're good in marketing and social media, maybe find a nonprofit that has an awful web presence or online presence. So what I did, funny story, so my last day, it was like a Tuesday with Dentsu. And then like the next morning, I had a meeting at 7 a.m. with a nonprofit to help them with putting together a marketing plan for the year. And my wife said, like, dude, you just left, after all these years. Like, why do you have a call at 7 a.m.? I said, I don't know. I usually start at 7. So it was just in my schedule. And then I said, yeah, maybe I need to take some time off. So I did take some time off. I went to the Rockies for a week. But I was helping. I volunteered, with the Red Cross, helping with blood drives, through my network. A lot of companies were not sponsoring blood drives. So that was one thing. But so leveraging my network, but also a lot of the smaller nonprofits, they needed hands-on help in just like, how do you put a job description for an executive director? So I did some advocacy work in DC actually for a year and a half plus. And I got to know a whole lot about DC and how DC works. And, there was a coalition of organizations and just how to put systems and processes and use CRMs and hire the right talent. And a lot of it really you learn in business, like CRMs. Nonprofits need CRMs. Or if you're good in marketing and in outreach and messaging, all those are very applicable to nonprofits. So that's, we grew a team from like a $200,000 a year budget to 1.5, 1.2 or $1.5 million budget for this one coalition. I learned a whole lot along the way and made a whole lot of new friends in a system, an ecosystem that I knew nothing about maybe 2, 3 years prior. So yeah, I think helping financially is important. I think even if you give $10 a month or whatever you can, I think it's important. Give from what you have, and then also give from the talent that you have, from the skills that you have, and in whichever cause that you think is, that you believe in.
That's pretty cool to hear. And one of the clients that went through my what I call my fire starter mastermind, which is essentially people who are at or nearing financial independence. They're moving into the next chapter, but want to get some. A lot of people are great savers and investors, and they get to the point, but they haven't thought about what that next chapter looks like. So that's what this program is designed to help people with. A woman in the program, Crystal, actually was being trained as a Salesforce administrator and was hoping to and is now actively working with nonprofits who need help with their CRM, or they don't even know that they need a CRM.
Oh,
and
yeah.
she's helping them get set up and be able to operationalize that so that they can be more successful and more methodical in how they're going about doing that. And I've worked with a few nonprofits in the Bay Area when I was there, and that was a critical need as well for them. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to bring our skills, or certainly financial resources, but also just the skills
Yep.
that we learn in business and in work that we can bring to these nonprofits that will make a big difference for them.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's switch gears a little bit, Feras. So let's get into talking about how people can go about starting a business. A lot of people have a dream of building a business and being entrepreneurial. I know that was certainly the case for me. Initially, my path was I want to do this at all costs, and almost quit Google a few times early on to say, look, it's time. I got to go all in on this and got to do this. And I remember I was starting my side hustle back in 2014 when my job was eliminated. I was like, well, maybe I don't need a job. It was right before I joined Google Analytics Premium. Luckily, I got that job. But I remember I sold my first consulting client. I got him to prepay me $10,000, and I thought I had
Nice.
made it. I thought I
Yep.
was good to go. And my wife quickly reminded me that you can't live on $10,000 in San Francisco for very long, which is very true. My path was really, I wanted to take care of the financial piece first, build financial independence, have the ability to pursue entrepreneurship in my own time, in my own way, without having to worry about putting food on the table. And now I'm very fortunate to be living that vision. My brain is still trying to trick me into saying you should be going faster and you need to get going, go, kind of that mentality that I had for my whole life, but certainly for the last 14 years at Google, which is a very go, what have you done for me lately type of environment. So, that's been my path. And I know others have desire to, start a business, whether it's a big business that ultimately gets sold for millions of dollars, or just a small side hustle or a lifestyle business that they can build to provide purpose and contribute to the community, especially after they've reached financial independence. So that was a long lead in, but I would love to start with talking about side hustles. In the FIRE community, everyone's always talking about side hustles and how you can, accelerate your path to financial independence by bringing in a little extra money on the side. I know you have a different take on side hustles, so I want to give you the floor and and hear your thoughts on side hustles.
I'm not in favor of silence in general. Everything is nuanced, right? So think if you go on YouTube, you go on social media, you hear all these claims that I got to $10,000 a month or $20,000 a month, doing this on the side. This is just not reality. Got to six figures in 3 months. Life doesn't work that way. Yeah, you might win the lottery. So that maybe the percentage of getting to six figures in a few months, it's just not how things work. So a lot of people are not happy with their current situation, maybe with the pay they're getting at their job, or they're not happy with their boss or the type of work they're doing. They want to make more money and they start getting to some side hustle and they think this is the way out. And in my experience, and I never side hustled, never ever also to focus on my main hustle. I guess my side hustle would be doing some work for nonprofits on the side, helping out. You kind of trick yourself because I think making it big, first of all, it's never guaranteed. Success is not guaranteed, no matter how hard you work. At times, things just work against you. It's not meant for you to happen. External factors, recessions, what have you, right? COVID, things could happen that will just won't make it. You'll learn a lot, but you won't make it. So I think if you put your effort into the main thing that you're doing, you're more likely to do better at it, to get a promotion, to make more money. And those skills that you've acquired by working hard and focusing on one thing, the main hustle, will serve you better when you want to start your business. So there are exceptions to the rule in my mind in terms of side hustling. One is if you really need cash, like some of us are struggling financially, you have an immediate need for cash. Yes, you got to do some side hustle, right? And you're exchanging your time for money. Or maybe you want to learn a hobby or you want to learn a new thing. So you're doing a side hustle really to learn about that space. And the third one, and this is, I think, the best one is I'm serious about starting my own business. So I'm going to start a side hustle today. And let's say I'm an accountant and I'm doing accounting for my company. I want to have my own CPA practice. So assuming within the legal framework of your relationship, you can do things on your own, then maybe I'll start taking on personal taxes for my friends and my family members, right? And see how this works when you're working with clients on my own. So in that case, I think I approve in that case where I'm doing this intentionally. I'm doing this side hustle. I'm working after hours to learn how to sell, how to pitch, how to market, how to set up my business, how to vet the idea. I'm getting feedback from clients. I'm researching competitors. So in that case, I'm 100% for it, but it should not be a permanent thing where I'm side hustling for years. I mean, you'd be kidding yourself because you're not giving attention to the main hustle, so you're not improving there, and your attention is divided. So I think there are exceptions where, again, if you need cash, if you're learning maybe a new hobby or you want to learn about a sector, you're doing this for a short period of time, or the best case scenario is I am serious about leaving what I'm doing and then focusing on the side hustle, and then maybe in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, jumping ships and going and making this my main hustle. To summarize, I think to make it big, a prerequisite, a requirement is that you got to work hard. You got to be focused. You got to be thinking about what you're doing day and night, especially initially. Later, you can delegate, you can hire, you can spend less time. But initially, a lot of businesses fail because you don't put a lot of attention into the business and you're distracted and you're focusing on it. That's a summary of how I think of and what I advise entrepreneurs when it comes to side hustling.
Got it. So it sounds like you are in favor of some side hustles with those three kind of situations, but it sounds like you are against just this idea of doing it just to, follow one of the fads, whether it be selling on Amazon or building SEO sites or just the latest fad from someone on LinkedIn talking about how they made $10,000 a month, and you can too if you just would take their course.
Absolutely. And again, if it's sort of like, I want to make a buck on this, I want to make an extra buck. Okay, well, do you need to if you need to make an extra buck? Yes. I mean, I wash dishes with an electrical engineering, degree before I found my, a job in the area I studied in. So no problem. If you have to do Uber, do you have whatever you have to do, if you got to provide for your family, you got to pay rent. If you got to do it, fine. But that should not be a long-term strategy. Just I'm side hustling to make a buck. It doesn't work. You'll make a buck, but then you're not, especially if you're doing sort of this time for money, like you're just doing something, you're babysitting or you're doing something on the side, like where you're not thinking of it as a business. Like, I want to build a business. I want to learn how to turn the skills I have into a thriving business. I want to grow. I want to, it just, the focus is divided. And a lot of times you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing to your main hustle. So you're not getting a promotion there. You're not getting the
Hmm.
bonus. You're not getting, you're not learning there. So it ends up not really working well, both sides of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've experienced all of those things. When I was saying my job was eliminated in 2014 and I had to find a new job or leave Google, I always say like I kind of envisioned myself out of that job. At the same time, I was in this entrepreneur program. I did exactly what we were talking about. I wanted to build a side hustle that I would grow into and leave Google and go do as my full-time job building a SaaS business, software as a service business. But the mindset that I had was so warped that it was like, I'm leaving Google, right? Like this is going to work. I'm going to leave Google and if I get promoted at Google again, I've failed. Like my mindset was all
Yeah.
twisted up. It was a total mess. And I had this situation that could have been if I had given it my full attention and my full energy, it had its challenges the way it was set up, but it could have been very good for me. And so I was so focused on the side hustling that I neglected the main hustle and ultimately got what I asked for. Said I wanted to leave Google and they told me, "Hey, your job's now eliminated." And so I totally can see how if you were to, focus on the main hustle or even switch your main hustle to something
Yeah.
that is a little bit more lucrative or a little bit more aligned with what you care about could be very valuable. That said, I've also had the other side of it where when I got on that team, the Google Analytics team, and I had a supportive manager and I was able to do what I call my on the job side hustle, where essentially I was learning to be a mindfulness facilitator and
Yeah.
teaching emotional intelligence and mindfulness to thousands of Googlers. That was really rewarding and also helpful not only to my core job when that type of thing was appreciated at Google. That's not exactly the case anymore, unfortunately. But it was also preparing me and helping me figure out, oh, hey, look, I think I really love this and I want to do it after Google as well, after I built the financial independence. Between that and then this podcast, I was really able to kind of figure out through that work what I really wanted to be doing afterwards and kind of quote unquote graduate into that afterwards. So I'd say that would probably be in your third case, but it did go on for a very long time. And it took losing my job at Google to actually make that leap. Never felt like the right time to make the leap into it. And that said, even after making that leap, it's been very hard, right? It's been tough to get the business going, to actually get someone to pay me to do the
Yeah.
workshops that I want to do. As we're speaking, I feel like I'm close to a few opportunities, but I thought it would be much easier than it is.
Yeah. Which is the other point that I didn't mention. Starting your own business and growing that business, I say, is 5 times harder than what most people think, because you're good at whatever technical skill you have, accounting, coaching, the seminars, the webinars, the seminar, the workshop that you do. But then there's like 7 other things you have to learn in business. You got to figure out the number one thing that most founders, actually 70% of founders, they start businesses and they don't have any sales and marketing background. So how do I get leads? That's one thing. How do I overcome the fear of talking to strangers about them giving me money? Imposter syndrome, right, is a thing. How do I got some leads. Some people might be interested. How do I identify the qualified leads? And then how do I move them along the way to close the deal? Like all of this, the sales process, the marketing process, these are skills that most of us don't have when we start businesses. So learning all of this, especially for those of us who haven't had to be in front of customers, it's hard. Or maybe we've worked with, in your case, Adam, like you worked with Fortune 1000, Fortune 500, myself. And then now I'm having to sell to a dentist or to a business owner here, like around the corner. not technical, who doesn't use email. I have to go and visit them at their store and wait for them to have a few minutes for me to convince them. That is hard. And I think if you come into it, like if you come into entrepreneurship with that in mind, like it is hard, it's difficult. Like the first time I rode the bike, the first time I drove the car, think of the first time, you were behind the wheel, like you were stiff. And if someone said there on the radio, don't talk to me. I'm busy focusing on one thing. And then, you become better at it, better at driving, better, now you're not even thinking about driving when you're driving, right? And same thing, actually, the same thing with sales and marketing. So sales and marketing, they're muscles, just like everything else. And they require the reps, they require the experience, they require, you failing. I remember the first day we decided, my business partner and I decided, okay, we're starting a business, we're going to do it. And we spent a couple of weeks, okay, well, how do we price? What do we do? How do we package? And we were delaying that day where we have to go and knock on doors. We kept delaying because we were scared. And then the very first day, I still remember it, here in Santa Clara, we went and we said, you know what, we'll go and go to 5 restaurants because we always go and eat there. They know, these owners know us. We ended up having 5 meals that one day because I just didn't have the courage to just go and just talk to them right away. So we'd go and order food and eat. And then as I'm paying, the bill, I would say, hey, we have this business. We want to build a website for you. 5 rejections, five meetings and 5 rejections. It was horrible. We were about to quit. We went back home that day and we said, you know what? Is this what we want to do? And we said, you know what? We have to learn it. And then I remember we had they threw at us all these rejections, like all these objections, like, oh, we don't need a website. I mean, this is 2003. Just keep that in mind. Nah, yeah, no, nobody goes online. I have, my business is doing well already. So every objection we got from those 5 business owners, we took a day and we had answers for them. And then later, that first sale I told you about, that $1,400 sale, it was to a restaurant, right? Because I knew exactly now how to talk to business owners in restaurants. So yeah, it's hard and there's no escape. You got to knock on doors. It is a numbers game because not only, there's a ratio of how many people you talk to until they become leads and how many leads buy from you, but you have to learn, and you have to learn through reps. And then it becomes second nature. And then, you start to do marketing in one thing. Maybe you do paid ads, or you go to networking events, and some things don't work and some things work. So you have to try different marketing channels. So it's really, I think people underestimate what it takes to get that first client and the first few clients. But if you keep going at it and you learn, and you pitch, and you learn how to pitch better and how to listen better and how to find the right audience for your service, eventually it'll work.
Yeah. It's interesting because that's been my experience. And I've been having lots of conversations with potential clients, and each time I'm learning from those conversations and I'm hearing different things, different pain points that they have, different challenges when I present the solution, when I present the workshop, and they tell me, "Oh, have you thought about this?" Or one thing is like, how would we pitch a client? Funny enough, as I mentioned to you when we spoke before, I'm bringing this workshop to partners like you were. And one thing that has come up in those conversations is, well, how would we pitch this to our clients? How do
Yeah.
we get them in the room? Who should we get in the room? And so these are all things that I've had to think about and learn and adapt for the next conversation. And I think, like you said, it's hard. Expect it to be hard, right? Like, this is what I tell people with meditation. It's like, expect your mind to wander, and then
Yeah.
it's not a problem. And so I think that the parallel is, expect building a business to be hard. Expect getting those first few sales to be hard, and just let it be hard and keep going and keep moving forward.
Absolutely. And I think depending on what you're selling, the sales cycle could be a day, it could be a week, it could be 3 months. If you're selling like a business to business B2B service to the enterprise, the sales cycle is going to be long. So you have to plant the seed, you have to find the right audience. And at times, and this is the most frustrating thing, like you do everything right. Like if you had a sales coach like watching over you, they tell you you've done everything right. The right person, the right pitch, the right price, the right solution. But there's another factor, timing. Sometimes it's not the
Mm,
time. There's a hold on issuing purchase orders, or there is budget freeze, or the person's about to go on a vacation and they don't want to sign you up and then they're out for a couple of weeks. So sometimes you do everything you can, everything right, and it's just not the right time.
Yeah.
But that's not a loss. You just have to, okay, put it in your spreadsheet, in your DIY CRM, if you're not using a CRM, and put a note that in 3 weeks I will follow up with Jane or with John and continue to add value to this person you spoke with. I think this is, most people think sales is like, we think of maybe used car salespeople, like you're car pitching. Sales is all about active listening. You got to establish authority, of course, like your skills, your certificates, whatever it is that you can solve the problem, right? That's important. But from that point on, it's really you listen to their pain points, as you said, to their needs, their aspirations. Like, how can you help them do things more efficiently, maybe save money, do things faster, whatever. And then keep adding value in every interaction. So for those of you listening who are new to sales and they're sending emails like follow-ups. You have to follow-ups. Nobody's just gonna buy from you from the first
Follow
interaction.
up is key.
And so you have to have a CRM. And if you're just starting, you do not need a software. It's a spreadsheet. Basically, I spoke with this person and here's what I learned, and here's my next action item. Follow up in 2 weeks, follow up in 3 months. And then every time you interact with this person, you have to add value. This, when you're adding value, like maybe sharing an industry report, maybe a blog post that you just wrote that addresses some of their concerns, maybe a video that maybe you just had a short or a video on a topic of interest. Always, or maybe you saw something on their website that doesn't look right, and hey, let's maybe fix this on your website. As long as you're adding value, think of it as, I think Stephen Covey said about depositing in your emotional bank account. This is in a relationship, which works well wonders if you're married or if you're in a relationship. So you're depositing, you're adding value. They'll remember this. Even if they don't buy from you, you are going to be this vendor, this consultant who is competent, who is responsive, and who's always helpful. And they'll remember you when they are maybe in the next business, or maybe they have a need, for what you offer in the future.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think I heard something, this book I was listening to called The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. And he basically says, there's a quote in there that's like, if you're only reaching out to people when you are trying to sell that to them, you're missing the point, right? You need to build that value. You need to plant those seeds and make those deposits over time. Otherwise, every time they see your name, they're going to think you're getting pitched.
It's hard. It requires that discipline. And I think, of course, I want to make a sale. Of course, I want to make a buck. I think subconsciously, I really want to help others. It does show. I think it manifests itself in different ways. But if you really want to be of help, and the help is not just like someone who's laid off, they need help get into maybe a business, find a job, but someone, again, they're wasting money. You can help them save money. They're just frustrated. They're not growing their business as fast as they can. They have issues maybe between their team members and their managers, and need maybe your workshop. They need to learn about better practices, whatever the case might be. You are, at the end of the day, helping someone solve a problem. And if you think about it that way, I think that builds confidence. Like when you're speaking with people, like if you believe it, that you are helping others, it shows. It's transmitted in ways we don't understand. But people, if you care, people feel it, people sense it. They know that you're pitching to them. If you're listening to them, understanding their needs, and really understanding when they're ready to buy, and then you're there for them, you will leave a very positive impression on them, and they'll remember you even if they didn't buy from you at that time.
Feras, let's shift gears now to what I call the Mindful Fire Final Four. And first question, I want to circle back to the idea of people not leveraging their own personal network when they're starting a business. And, we've talked a little bit about sales and marketing here, and I think that is really the first thing that you need to do, because in those conversations, you're going to figure out, do you have product market fit? Is there actually a need for what you're trying to do? And that's how your first conversations and ultimately your first sales are going to come. You need to talk to people and you need to have leads. So I'd love to hear you expand a little bit about how you'd advise somebody to leverage their personal network to get things going.
We have a bunch of what we call black belt principles that start with Feras, given my martial arts background. One of them is that 10+5 rule. And that is, especially if you're in this early stage of vetting your idea, speak with 10 potential buyers, people who have a need for what you offer, and research 5 competitors. And within your network, who's a potential, let's say you offer public speaking consulting, you help people become better speakers. So look at all those managers, people who are out there, and just talk to them. Like, don't just pitch, say, I'm starting a business and I want to learn more about this and I want your advice. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone wants to give advice, right? So hear them out and understand how they are getting their problem solved today. Are they working with maybe someone who is in the same space as you are, and ask, like, what is it that they like about what this person is offering? What is it that they don't like? So after these 10 conversations, you should have a good idea about what problems people have and what unmet needs they have. So maybe all the providers around you, they're not very as responsive. Maybe they're very costly. Maybe there's a long lead time. So whatever issues you find in these conversations, that could be an advantage that you have. Maybe you can offer, especially early on. I don't recommend people compete on price, but initially, to get those first few clients, give for free or sell it at a very low price, because you need the reps. You need to sell and deliver. So talk to 10 people will enable you to have a solid understanding of the market, of your potential buyers. And then when you research competitors, you also understand how the competitors are presenting themselves to the marketplace. And maybe again, between the needs of the people and what the competitors are offering, I think you can find ways for you to stand out. And again, leveraging your network, will invest half an hour of their time with you to tell you about how they feel about what you offer.
Got it. What about like reaching out to people that you know personally and asking them if they know anyone who needs what you offer? Would you recommend that, or?
100%, 100%. So there's the science part of it and there's the art part of it, right? And the art part of business and the art of scaling, the art of networking, you can't become a great artist overnight. So you have to do the reps, right? But the science, you don't want to be obnoxious about it. Like, go on LinkedIn and just spam everybody like, hey, I just started a business. I'm very excited. Do you want to buy from me? There's a feature in LinkedIn. I'm looking at LinkedIn here. You can go under your settings and you can actually download all your connections. Go through that. Let's say you have, I don't know, 1,500. So spend some time. This is your database. This is your CRM in a way, right? And put people in categories, maybe warm connections, like very warm connections, people that really, really, they care for you. They love you. You've helped them out. People, maybe a mentor here, a mentor there, your ex-boss, whatever. So identify people that maybe you can lean on the more, and then others who are maybe customers, people in your network, and then it's maybe those you just met casually at a conference. So start, and then maybe put another column there, people who have experience in the space, in what you offer. Maybe they might be potential clients. So I would reach out to them and let them know of what you're doing. Obviously, prerequisite is you've updated your LinkedIn profile to tell the story, right? And just catch up with them. And to our point earlier, if you've been good at staying in touch with people, then it'll be just another catch up. If you haven't been, keeping up with people, and some of us have a large network and we don't keep up with everyone. I would say anyone whom you've left a positive impression on in the past, those people you can tap into. I don't know. People love to help, in my mind,
Mhm.
And, they might be busy, they might not get back to you, but make it that whole follow up. It is. You have to think about it. And we do have a video. We do have a video, The Ultimate Guide to Sales Funnels. And I talk about the concept of funnels. I know funnels are linear and nothing in life is linear, but I think it helps get the point across to people who are new to sales. Like, there's this whole idea of awareness and then consideration and then education, before you can sell. So you have to think of everyone you interact with. They don't know anything about you. I want to make them aware of what I do and then educate them a little bit more. And they can potentially become a client, or at a minimum, they'll refer me to others. And I think, again, it's a numbers game. So you have to keep adding people to your, if you took a segment of your LinkedIn connections and start emailing them out. So then the next week you add another maybe 10, then next week another 10. So I always tell entrepreneurs, I want to see your CRM, your DIY CRM, sort of growing both ways. Like, I want you to see you adding more leads to it, like more rows to it. And then I also want to see progress this way, where you are okay, I'm following up,
moving
I'm
people along.
calling, I'm emailing, I'm sending, I'm writing a blog post and connecting, before you go to cold calling and cold emailing, I'm not saying don't do that. There is a place and time for these. I think a lot of people just jump into it, and there are tools today to do that. And you get emails, and you can use LinkedIn, the LinkedIn Navigator. Yes, there's a place and time for these, but
Hmm.
initially, I would say exhaust your connections, your network before that. I think because you have a higher chance of converting, because the trust and the credibility is there, so you can build on that. Whereas with a cold lead, you have to establish credibility and trust before they'll buy from you. So I would say it's a systematic way of that spreadsheet initially. Later, you need a CRM. You got to invest in a CRM later, but initially a spreadsheet, and you're adding names to it, and then you're making progress in terms of contacting people and doing the follow-ups.
Got it. All right, Ferris. So the second question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone early on their path to financial independence?
You got to work hard. You gotta have skills. So we have another black belt principle. Passion is optional. Skills and sacrifice are not. If you want to start a business and grow it, get to that financial independence, there's no escape. You got to work hard, and you have to make some sacrifices. And then you can find passion within the job itself or maybe elsewhere. But there's no escape in my mind to work really hard. You don't have to be a workaholic. You still have to take care of yourself and the important relationship that you have. But I think leisure time, hobbies, in that season of your life where you're building a business, working hard is essential, is important. You can't do it without it.
That's true. If you in anything, if you want it to work, you got to really put the effort in and make, it a priority. All right, Ferris, the third question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone getting started with meditation and or mindfulness?
Everyone starts at a different maybe place in their spiritual journey, their mindfulness journey, but that small, repetitive, consistent action is better than, I think it's more effective than, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to say like going on a retreat is a bad thing, but like that discipline, whatever you do in the morning, in the evening, throughout the day, but that discipline to unplug from everything else, and focus on that practice, whether it's that grateful mind, thinking of others who helped you, and be thankful. If you are into religion and believe in God, and your relationship with the creator is important. Whatever it is that you do, I think taking the time and dedicating, even if it's a few minutes, I think, and then also avoiding distractions. And in our lives, there's just a lot of a lot of distractions. You really can't get anywhere in life if spiritually, mindfulness wise, or in business, if you're not disciplined and doing hard things. If it's just a lot of your time in the week is on leisure activities, maybe cut down some of that and put it in something a bit more useful.
Got it. And Ferris, the final question is, how can people find you online, connect with what you're doing, and yeah, and benefit from the information and content you're putting out in the world to support business owners?
Yeah, thank you. You can just go to www.startupwithferas.com. Feras spelled Feras. So that's our website. We have a weekly newsletter you can sign up for, and we have a bunch of articles on all things entrepreneurship. And then you can go to our YouTube channel at Startup with Feras and check out the content there. We publish a video a week and a bunch of shorts. We're on all, Instagram, Facebook, but I'm mostly active on YouTube and on LinkedIn. So check us out there. Send us questions. I make it a habit of answering questions from the community. So happy if you're stuck, if you're struggling, or if you have great things and you want to take it to the next level, just shoot us a question and we'll more than happy to answer them.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Ferris, for being here. I really appreciate it and enjoyed the conversation and learned quite a few things that I'm going to implement in my own business as I continue to build it.
I appreciate this conversation as well, and thank you for producing and getting great guests on your podcast. I've listened to some of them and great content, so I appreciate it too.